All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to talk to you. I had yesterday off. I was driving back from New York City working. Well, people said, "Are you working?" Or they said, "You're working." I really wasn't working. I was acting as a volunteer. I was volunteering for the Jill Stein campaign in New York City and in Westchester County, in New York State, really. The goal to get Stein on the ballot in the Empire State. And it's very challenging to get third-party candidates, non-duopoly candidates on the ballot in New York State, although Working Families Party now, I guess, has a real critical mass, and they're able to as well at least endorse candidates. They don't really run their own candidates so much in Working Families Party as they endorse usually Democrats who are at least ostensibly, apparently more progressive. I actually got into it a little bit with a Working Families guy. He said, "Hey, come on, sign the petition for Jill Stein." And he's like, no, we can't help Trump, can't help Trump. By the way, there you go. Please click subscribe, even if it does overlap slightly with my oval in the Progressives thumbnail I'm using for today's program. Hope you'll call me, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646, 242-5646. Not easy for me to say at all. The idea for today's program, and I will talk a little bit about New York later on in the program. I want to use some of my experiences, especially in Queens, in a relatively high-density Palestinian neighborhood. When I say high-density, meaning there were a lot of Palestinians and Muslims in the area where I was canvassing. Was it yesterday, Sunday? And the reason, of course, I went there is because my sense, and I think correctly so, is that Palestinians are probably the most likely Palestinian Americans, Palestinians who are, well, you have to be a registered voter in the state of New York to sign a petition for Stein to be on the ballot. You have to actually be registered in the state. My sense is that I would have the most likelihood of success, the greatest positive responses from people who are members of the Palestinian community, because Stein has been so, clearly opposed to Israeli genocide and supporting an end to all arms shipments to Israel, which clearly Joe Biden opposes, right? He supports arms to Israel, and in fact, he halted his temporary pause about a week after he began his temporary pause of arms shipments to Israel. The idea, though, for today's program, Progressives, kind of a bunch of different things came together. I had heard that Kyle Kulinski, who is prominently featured in my thumbnail, one of the more popular, I suppose, progressive hosts, over 1 million, I believe, subscribers. There he is on the right with the dyed white hair. He famously, and I say famously because I featured his conversation along with his wife, Crystal Ball, and Brianna Joy Gray about whom progressives should support in this election cycle, where he argued vehemently that if you lived in a swing state, you had to support Joe Biden because the risk of Trump was so great, A, and because B, according to Kolinski, Biden was much better than he'd ever expected, that there were a lot of wins with Biden, that Democrats really are on the side of poor, struggling, and working people. That was Kolinski's position about 8 months ago, before, to be fair to Kolinski, before the Israeli genocide began very, very much in earnest after October 7. And that position that he took, that, progressives, liberals, people who are on the left have no choice but to support Joe Biden, at least if they live in any, in anything but a dead red or dark blue state. That position was pushed back hard by Brianna Joy Gray. And I agree with Gray. So then it seems, it came out that Kolinski suddenly was now endorsing the Green Party candidate, Jill Stein. So that would be a radical shift if he really did endorse Jill Stein. And I was, I watched some of the endorsement announcements, endorsement in quotes, and I didn't hear an endorsement. I didn't hear it. So I was like, no, he's not really a real progressive. He's still a faux progressive, even though the evidence is even more powerful now than it was before the invasion of Gaza by Israel. Now the evidence is even stronger that you have a moral obligation not to support Joe Biden, but to support a pro-peace candidate if there is one. But he has not met that obligation, that moral imperative. He has not met it. And also what jumped at me, the faux progressives, and I've talked about AOC quite a bit as a faux progressive. Jamie Raskin, clearly a faux progressive. I got a fundraising, well, I saw it in my Facebook feed. I don't really get it. I got a fundraising, request, shall we say, from AOC. And I was like, this is such BS. She's claiming that because of her identity as a young Latina woman, she's somehow on your side. She's somehow on the side of working people, and she self-identifies as a working person. I guess she grew up in a working class family, so that's true. But we know there are plenty of working class people who betray the people that they grew up with. They betray the family members who have not made it at least into the secure upper middle class or higher. We see that over and over. Clarence Thomas would be a great example of that. But they're Joe Biden, right? Scranton Joe. So this is hardly something. Bill Clinton was not did not grow up wealthy, and neither did Barack Obama or Michelle Obama. And yet none of them are progressive. None of them have championed poor, struggling, working people in their political careers. So the fact that AOC grew up as a working class Latina is of interest, and I would be happy to support her if she were a progressive politician who was fighting for poor working class and struggling Americans, but she isn't. So it's just performative. So again, another progressive. And I also wanted to revisit Dr. West's campaign. People who have been following me know that I was a very strong supporter of Dr. West when he first announced that he was running as a Green. Left the first, he was going to be on the People's Party ballot, which there's no such thing. Then he was, going to run as a Green, which was great, and I completely endorsed him, supported him, and then he left that. So is he a progressive? And I have to say, no, he is not. And we'll get into that as well. So we'll focus on all three and some other topics as well if we get to. Before we get, but I just, as always, want to, what I've said over and over is I feel that, the people that need to be centered first on Halitics are the Palestinian people, especially those living in Gaza, which is so beset. And the suffering is just so off the charts there. And numbers really don't do any justice. But I don't even know if imagery can at this point either, how much pain the people there are under at the hands of the merciless hands of the Israeli military and Prime Minister Netanyahu there. So just in the past 24 hours, you can see the dayline there, May 21, children among 85 killed. So very, very deadly day in the last 24 hours. Drone attack in southern Gaza, right? That's where we're supposed to be, where you're supposed to be safe. Refugee camp, 3 children killed, 85 total dead, 200 injured at the hands of Israel. I just, how it was very disheartening for me. I'll just say this before we get into the faux progressives. When I was trying to get signatures for Stein, it was challenging. I didn't get as many signatures as I had hoped. I wasn't what I call the most successful gathering for me, but I'm still glad I did it. It was still the right thing to do. I feel like I wasn't as valuable to the campaign as I would have liked. That is my regret. When I drove around Westchester a little bit on Saturday and through, I guess, maybe more predominantly Jewish neighborhoods, I guess so, both Saturday and Sunday, saw so many signs for George Latimer for Congress. Latimer is challenging Jamal Bowman. He was begged by AIPAC, please, we've got to get Bowman out because he's at least, he said a few things that are somewhat critical of Israel. We've got to get him out. And so George Latimer running, and I saw Latimer signs everywhere. As a Jewish person, I've wanted to believe and maybe flattered myself and flattered my co-religionists to believe, hey, we're not all for Israel. There's a lot of dissent. A lot of Jews are critical of Israel. But you know what? I have to say, it sure seems, the evidence sure strikes me that most Jewish people really are all in for Israel, or 95% in for Israel. That breaks my heart. That breaks my heart that my quote people, I mean, they're kind of my people, who have been victimized for millennia by Christians mostly, but other groups as well have targeted Jews, that we who have a long history that we never stop telling ourselves of being victims now are the victimizers, and we cannot say this is wrong. We have to stop this. It's heartbreaking to me. I used to want to believe, Jewish people were more righteous. We were more likely, Jewish people were very much more likely to be evident, for example, in the civil rights movement in the 60s. Jews still do tend to vote more Democratic and tend to be more liberal. There was an article in the was it the New York Times, or I don't know, maybe San Francisco, somewhere, that was reporting on how California prosecutors were deliberately striking Jewish potential jurors from pools if it was a capital case, because Jewish people are just less, and I think probably still are in general, less likely to agree to imposing death on a defendant, on a criminal defendant. And we know, of course, that sometimes those murder defendants are wrongly convicted and wrongly killed by the state. I oppose the death penalty in all cases, but even in a situation where the murderer is convicted, a person is convicted of murder, even a gruesome, heinous crime, I don't think they should be executed. But sometimes people are convicted and they're not even guilty. So, for me to know that my co-religionists are less likely to impose capital punishment, that says something to me that's good about my people, right? My Jewish. But the fact that we cannot separate ourselves from this genocidal state, this maniac, that somehow there's this belief, this feeling that our tribal identity as Jews extends across the Atlantic Ocean, extends across the Mediterranean Sea to this country where many of us have never visited, and those who have, some will tell us it's really it's a cruel, oppressive place, Israel, if you're not Jewish. So the fact that we cannot seem to separate ourselves, as, I'm just using anecdotal evidence, but just talking to my friends, family members who are Jewish and not necessarily Orthodox, not necessarily, very religious or, religious, conservative plus, it just breaks my heart. I don't know what to do. I really don't. It's so wrong. I get why a lot of people really, really want to believe that this guy endorsed Jill Stein. And certainly the first person who would want to believe that is Jill Stein herself. I mean, there you go. Look, that's from her, is it YouTube channel? I think so. Endorsement. Kyle Kolinski for Jill Stein. Jill Stein has my support. And he does say that. He does say that, but I'm going to play the whole video, which I believe, and I could be wrong, Sabby Sabs did too. But, let's be real, folks. if somebody is supposedly an endorser, then they say, I endorse this person for this office. I support this person for this office. I want them to be elected. You'll hear from Kolinski. I'll ask you if he says that. But more importantly, why is it so important? Why? I get it. Look, he's a guy on the left. He's the freedom. What was it? The caucus he put together, the progressive. No, it was social justice Democrats, right? Isn't he? Justice Democrats. He created Justice Democrats with Cenk. He ain't for justice. We'll hear this, but there it is, Sabs. And she played the whole video, and I was watching it, and I was like, it's 3 minutes. It's a little boring. It's a little dry. He doesn't really, his video, meaning Kolinski. I'm not going to tell people this guy endorses somebody if he doesn't endorse them. And I'm going to call it out. I'm going to call out this misrepresentation of Kyle Kolinski's position. He just does not come out and support Jill Stein for president. And to me, that's an indictment of Kolinski. Kolinski doesn't, if you're a progressive, go ahead. I think you should watch lots of different people and learn from people who may share different values than you. But don't fool yourself. Like, I don't want conservatives. I don't want standard issue Dems not to watch my live stream. I want you to. To me, it's more important that I reach people who don't agree with me. That's far more important than that I preach to the converted. Sadly, this medium rewards those who reach their core, right? Their base. Most people choose media that they agree with, right? As much as, we say we're open to different viewpoints and different dialogues, most of us are looking to have our own opinions validated. We're looking for facts that support our views, not we're looking to conform our views to the facts. And the fact and the simple matter is, Kyle, I don't think we should do that. But what I do think we should do is be open. I think we should watch people, learn from people who are open-minded, who are willing to entertain views, willing to entertain evidence, acknowledge evidence that doesn't support their viewpoint. And I don't think you get that from Kolinski. Let's play it. Let's see. We'll stop it at various places. You tell me, 240-242-5646, if you think Kyle Kolinski really did endorse Jill Stein.
Hey guys, it's Kyle Kolinski here from The Kyle Kolinski Show and Secular Talk on YouTube, and also Crystal Kyle and Friends. I want to wish Jill Stein a very, very happy birthday. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you tonight, but I wanted to lend a message of support. So we had her on the show.
So there's the first, I wanted to lend a message of support. So is that an endorsement? I don't think so. I mean, support for what? Support for her winning? Support for her as a person? That's not an endorsement. I know that was what was used, right? That's where we saw the actual claim by Sabby that Kolinski endorses Stein. But, and you can see it on the top. You can actually see where Jill Stein, where it says endorsement, Kyle Kolinski for Jill Stein. So I'm like, okay, well, is that Kyle Kolinski who entitled this video endorsement, Kyle Kolinski for Jill Stein? It's actually not. This is from Jill Stein's website. And she named it. She named it endorsement, Kyle Kolinski for Jill Stein. At no point does Kyle Kolinski identify this video as endorsement for Jill Stein.
The other day, and she really opened my eyes to a number of very disturbing things. First of all, to show you how terrible mainstream media is and how much they bury stories. I hadn't even heard of the fact that Jill Stein was assaulted at a pro-Palestine protests, and then cops had the nerve to charge her with assault.
All right, so I was watching this and I was like, wait a second, how did you not know that? If you recall, if you're a watcher of Halitics, we talked about it the day after. I played video. I mentioned it the day after, and then later in the week, I played video of the Jill Stein, how she was roughed up by the police. So I was really shocked. I was really surprised that Kolinski didn't know that until she mentioned it to him. There was plenty of media attention on this. In fact, I believe I played the St. Louis news story, and I think she was interviewed as well by a news reporter. I can't remember which one. It wasn't well covered. I agree with Kolinski. It wasn't on, I don't believe the New York Times mentioned this, but it was a story. He should have known. You don't get to just say, oh, well, it's the media's fault that I didn't learn this. No, it was there. I was really surprised he didn't know that. And Sabs makes the same point. She's like, I don't know how he didn't know this one.
This is a presidential candidate and a woman who's over the age of 70. And they're so extreme and so egregious and so brazen that they charge her with assault when all she's doing is standing on the right side of history. Look, it reminds me of what happened during the anti-Iraq war protests. It reminds me of what happened during the anti-Vietnam war protests.
So there's a lot. This is over 3 minutes. And the reason I'm playing the entire video is because I don't want anyone to say, well, you missed the place where Kolinski actually comes right out and says, vote for Jill Stein for president. See, that's an endorsement. Vote for Jill Stein for president. I want Jill Stein to be president. I support Jill Stein for president. That's an endorsement. I didn't want anyone to say, well, Hal, you missed that point. I didn't want to miss it myself. I was like, well, maybe he says it. So we'll play the whole 3+ minutes.
I mean, what happened during the civil rights movement? The people who are on the correct side, the people who are doing the right thing in the moment, they get viciously smeared, and in this instance, also literally assaulted. So I heard that story, and it was grotesque, man. It was grotesque. And Jill also made another good point about how New York is effectively trying to keep the Green Party off the ballot by using dirty tricks. This is another thing that I was unfamiliar with. I mean, I know the myriad ways that
I'm going to stop it there because I've got to look into that. I'm not clear what those dirty tricks are. It's just really hard. I don't, look, they're just super sticklers. You have to have the signature on one line and you have to have the printed name below it, and everything has to line up. And if you have anything in the wrong place on the signature ballot, they're going to throw it out. On the signature, page, that the collection, they're going to throw it out. I'm not clear what exact dirty tricks Kolinski's talking about or that Stein is talking about. Maybe he's just referring to the onerous nature, the very short window that you have to gather signatures. That may be what he means, but it's hard. I'm not denying it. It's expensive. I'm not clear what dirty tricks, though, he's talking about. I'm going to try to figure that out if I can.
They try to keep the Green Party off the ballot in multiple different states, but she gave specific examples of how New York is trying to do it. Again, this is another thing you don't hear the media talk about. And again, I'm ashamed to say that me, as somebody in media, I didn't even know about that, right? Jill also went on to make another phenomenal point about how if you look at some of these ideas that are now viewed as the duh positions on the progressive side now, a lot of it originated with the Green Party, man. Student debt abolition, free college, single-payer Medicare for all, the Green New Deal, they've always led the charge.
All right, so I'm not clear about all those being original to the Green Party, right? I mean, I think Medicare for all, that's been around since the 1940s at least. There was a plan to nationalize health care during the Truman administration, going back that far. Medicare is Medicare itself was passed by the Democrats under LBJ. So I'm not, this is not some kind of a newfangled idea. Yes, the Green Party is more progressive for sure, and Kolinski should know that. But even the Green New Deal, as I understand it, was really more of an idea from AOC, not from the Green Party.
In saying we're anti-war, So again, I want to wish Jill a very, very happy birthday. I want her to know that she has my support. I think she's very brave.
All right, so does she has my support? Is that an endorsement? See, I think that's about as close as he comes. I do not buy that as an endorsement. He doesn't say, I'm going to vote for her. Does he? He doesn't say, I'm going to vote for her for president. But even if he said that, to me, that's not endorsement. And we'll play a clip while I explain that. There's no endorsement here. He doesn't do that.
For running in this environment, in this climate. And look, bottom
she's
line
brave.
is,
okay, how is that an endorsement? How is that an endorsement? It's not. He's not endorsing her. And it really irritates me, frankly, as I guess maybe I'm a little bit jealous as a talk show host who has endorsed Jill Stein, who says to vote for Jill Stein, who says, you got to vote for Jill Stein. I don't care what state you're in. For people to make a big deal over this wishy-washy non-endorsement. Yeah, I mean, no, he doesn't endorse her. Let's play the rest of this. See if I'm missing something.
There is one candidate in this race who is both on the ballot and anti-war. And we all know who that is. Donald Trump likes to pretend he's anti-war. He's not. Sometimes Biden likes to pretend he's anti-war. He's clearly not. He's arming and funding a genocide right now.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, Kolinski makes good arguments for voting for Jill Stein. He describes a dynamic where he should be endorsing Jill Stein. She's the one pro-peace candidate. But he doesn't endorse her.
Cornel West, I'm not sure he's going to get on that many ballots. And RFK, don't get me started. This is a guy who pretends like he's the most anti-war, but he's also in favor of Netanyahu committing a genocide and us arming and funding it. And he completely dehumanizes Palestinians on a regular basis. So from where I'm sitting, from my perspective, there's one candidate in this race that's doing the right thing and standing on the right issues. And, you know, look, fighting for it at a time that's important historically where nobody else is stepping up and doing the right thing. And so, again, very happy birthday to Jill Stein. Sorry I couldn't be there with you guys today, but I'm there with you in spirit. And Jill, we wish the best for you moving forward.
All right, so no endorsement. That's the end of it. No endorsement. Wish you the best moving forward. You're the one pro-peace candidate. But doesn't tell anyone to vote for Jill Stein. And some people might think, well, Hal, wait a second. You're not really being fair. I mean, he just made this really nice birthday gift to Kolinski. He wouldn't have done that if he wasn't supporting her. He clearly thinks she's the candidate people should vote for, right? Isn't that true? And, you know, of course, that's just false. I mean, he doesn't say that. He never says she's the person to vote for. And if you listen, I'm going to play a video for him and play the video where he explicitly rejects the idea. He explicitly rejects the idea that people should vote for Cornel West over Joe Biden. Certainly, he rejects it in swing states. So if that's his view, and he says, hey, I like Dr. West, I agree with Dr. West on more issues than I do agree with Biden. He does say that, but he doesn't say to vote for Stein. Certainly not. Or he doesn't say to vote for West. I'm sorry, because the question was whether to vote for Dr. West. And he flat out rejects the idea. He throws cold water on it. So I can't, view, given this history, which we're going to play in a second. This is his non-endorsement of Cornel West. Don't you think we should be honest, folks? I mean, and not say somebody who doesn't endorse somebody, that we shouldn't say they endorse them? Here we go.
In New York, I'm in a safe state. So would I vote for Cornel West in New York? Yes, because I have a 95% agreement with him on policy. And I think it would be nice to get the Green Party in a position where if they become more viable because we get ranked choice voting or something, it'd be nice to grow their popularity a little bit. And when we get ranked choice voting, I think they kind of automatically become a lot more viable. So I'd like to help out in that process. But if I'm in a swing state and it's Biden versus Trump, I'm at the point now where I don't even think it's a tough call. I would definitely vote for Biden, because either in that situation, even if other people are running,
it's not even a tough call. It's not, this is not an endorsement, right, of Dr. West. He's saying it's not a tough call. I'm voting for Joe Biden. And at no point, or he said, if I'm in a swing state, it's not a tough call. I'm voting for Joe Biden. He didn't say in his, quote, endorsement video of Stein, it's not a tough choice. I'm voting for Jill Stein. He says, she's the best candidate. He doesn't say he's voting for her. He didn't endorse her.
Either the Democrat or the Republican is going to win. And in my estimation, Biden has definitely passed what I would describe as my bare minimum purity test. And I think if it's him or Trump, or even him or DeSantis or anybody, he just blows them out of the water. And so I think I'd happily vote for Biden in that instance.
All right, so he'd happily vote for Biden. That's what you call an endorsement. I mean, he didn't say he was going to vote for Biden in the general because he's in New York State and New York is going to go blue no matter who. But that is basically an endorsement of Joe Biden. He blows out DeSantis. He blows Trump out of the water. He doesn't say, Jill Stein, you got to vote for her. I would vote. He says, yeah, she's better than the others. But he never says, I would vote for her happily if I was in a swing state because she blows them out of the water. No, he doesn't endorse Jill Stein. And it's irritating to me to the nth degree that this is somehow being touted as an endorsement. And it does actually make me kind of annoyed with Jill Stein to claim. You just say thank you for the support, because he does say I offer you support. He doesn't endorse her. So that's one progressive down. Let's get to the others. Here's, again, I mean, AOC, I know she's like really beloved. And I find this stuff, it's just like the support for Israel breaks my heart. I'm really at a loss to understand this. This is not, when you post something like this, May 13th this year, so a week ago. I just saw it today, though, because, these fundraising posts, they put in some more money, and then they keep distributing it through Facebook, these ads. So this is the first time I saw it was today. And I'm like, you're not progressive if the first thing you put in your ad is, I'm the youngest woman in U.S. history to be elected to Congress. Okay? And what? I was a waitress. Okay? I was a server in a restaurant. That doesn't make me progressive. I am Latina. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Latinos for Trump? This is not what you write if you're a progressive. What you write if you're a progressive is, I want an America where everyone has enough and no one has too much, and I'm fighting for it. And these are the things I'm doing to make things better. There is not one word in that first paragraph that discusses anything that AOC has done, is doing, will do, is prepared to do, wants to do to make life better for poor, struggling, and working Americans. She doesn't mention any issues she's fighting for. She'll get to them. I'm not going to deny that. That's not how you start. If you're a progressive, that's not what you start. You don't start, because what she is doing right there is pitting people against each other. She's saying, because I'm a young woman, I was a waitress, I am Latina, I'm on your side, and the people who aren't those things probably aren't on your side, right? An older man, somebody who's not Latina, maybe they come from a wealthier background, they're not on your side. That is an absolutely regressive message. That pits people against each other based on something other than their shared economic interest. and other than their shared desire for a better, fairer, juster America and world. It's not progressive. She's not progressive. And then when her next sentence is even worse. She makes it explicit. She's pitting people against each other. If you don't like AOC, you're classist, you're ageist, you're misogynist, you're racist. Can't be just, oh, I don't really agree with her policies. I think she should have forced the vote. I don't think she should have voted for Hakeem Jeffries, the Congress member from Wall Street, AIPAC, and the military-industrial complex. I don't think she should have voted for him to be the House Democratic leader. I don't want her out there as the face of the Joe Biden campaign. That's why I don't like her. But according to AOC, if you don't like her, if you disagree with her, if you're mad at her, it's because you're classist, ageist, misogynist, and racist. No, that's not, no. Together, we've built a movement fighting for transformative change. I'm sorry, but I haven't seen that movement. Yes, here she's touching on some issues, which is good. Where's the fight for transformative change? You didn't force the vote. I haven't heard you talk about Medicare for All at once in Congress of late. You supported for House majority or House leader of the Democrats. And then, no, I guess she didn't vote for Mike Johnson. To give her credit, she didn't vote for Mike Johnson to be House Speaker. But she did vote for Hakeem Jeffries, and he is not for Medicare for All. What about democratizing fundraising power? She's like the #1 fundraiser. I guess she's just saying that means I take money from people who are working class, not just rich. Okay, people who can't afford to give are giving to you. What is the appeal? I'm sorry, I totally don't get it. If you like her, if you think she's great, let me know. I'm really curious. What I see that's progressive in AOC is about what I saw when it comes to Kyle Kulinski's endorsement of Jill Stein. It ain't there. These people aren't progressive. Let's just get into this just a little more with her. So she supports Joe Biden for president. Here she's going to go with, any blue will do, establishment Dem, superstar Stephen Colbert. And she's on the show, and she has some very, very kind words for President Biden. And I think it's important we go through this a little bit just to see again how she's not. And why look, I don't want to just tear people down. We've got to provide an alternative. But the purpose of doing this is to say the Democratic Party is not the solution. The Democratic Party is not making things better for you. The Democratic Party is not fighting for you. The leaders in the Democratic Party, including AOC, are not on your side. If we want something better, we have to do something different. And that means voting for Jill Stein. It means voting for progressives, true progressives, green progressives, those who've demonstrated that they will take on the power elite.
Empathy.
And we don't get that. We aren't getting that from anyone in the Democratic Party. Here's Colbert and AOC.
I'm curious, have you spoken to him directly about this?
I have.
And what have those conversations been like? If you can tell me.
I think I think it's important. I think many of us have engaged the president on this issue, and you're correct.
So the issue being Gaza, right? The continuing support for genocide of the Gazan people. And she's getting all serious. Before she was laughing and joking and having a ball with Colbert. All I can say is, again, I just see somebody who says phony is a $3 bill. I don't get it. I don't get the AOC love. If you have it, let me know. 240-242-5646. And if you don't, by the way, you can post as well. If you don't, let me know whether you agree with me that it just makes no sense that she's considered some kind of a hero in the Democratic Party on the left, by the left.
Of tremendous empathy. And
yes, he has tremendous empathy. I love these kind of bald assertions, no evidence-free statements. He has great empathy.
I think as time goes on, we are starting to see the increased urgency that he's seen on this issue. He called Prime Minister Netanyahu recently, and I think we've seen dramatic shifts since that time, especially.
All right, so she's saying, and I'm going to stop here because it just turns my stomach. So this was, I think, back in April, not so long ago. She's seeing dramatic shifts in Biden's policies. And again, there was that moment, right, where Biden halted the arms shipment, the one shipment of bombs. And we know we've been through that as well. It didn't make a difference. Israel already had more than enough weaponry to conduct the Rafah campaign, the Rafah slaughter, which is ongoing. So really, it was a meaningless performative gesture. But yeah, okay, Biden, I guess, gets like a D- for that. This is Reuters, though. A couple of weeks ago, Biden says we're not going to ship some bombs over to Israel. This is last week.
Warnings about that offensive. The White House has told Congress it wants to send $1 billion package of weapons aid to Israel into the congressional review process. That's according to 2 U.S. officials.
All right, so there it is. It's just that simple. The White House wants to send another $1 billion worth of aid, military aid, to Israel while it's in the throes, right, of its violent spasm against Rafah. We just said 85 killed, 3 kids killed, drones. And this is the time when the White House is saying, hey, no more pause. We're going to send more weapons. Any word from AOC? None. Silence. I went to her page. I saw nothing. I went to her, Twitter feed. Nothing. No comment. No criticism. No challenge. Nothing. We're seeing a dramatic shift, right? That's what she said. Dramatic shift. So, really big news over the weekend. I have not centered this. Maybe I should. The International Criminal Court is charging, I believe, they've actually used the word genocide. They have issued warrants for, I believe, ethnic cleansing, if not genocide, against Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, who is the Israeli military leader. If there was a dramatic shift in White House policy, wouldn't President Biden say, what we're seeing in Israel do to Gaza is so wrong, so horrible, so horrific. We say never again, but we're seeing it again. We're seeing what happened in the 1940s in Germany, what was done to the Jews. Now their state, the Jewish state, is doing this to another people. So, we've got to, support the ICC warrants, or at a minimum, just keep your mouth shut. Keep your damn mouth shut. That's what my wife said. Just stay out of it. Biden, you don't need to weigh in. Not one word from AOC. I didn't see anything on her Twitter feed even saying this is a good call. I think some in Congress have supported the warrants being issued, but I'm not sure if she's one of them. Probably she is. But in the end, she's all in for Biden. She's a campaign spokesperson for Biden. She's a, what do you call it, where you represent them? I guess she's a representative. I don't think that's the word I was looking for, but she's a progressive. She's not progressive. She's not fighting for you. She's not fighting for poor people. She's not fighting for working people. She's fighting for elites. She's fighting to make things even easier, more comfortable, less challenging for the richest and most powerful people. She's not a progressive. She's a faux-gressive. We need to do something different than we're doing. All right. Third faux-gressive of the day, Dr. West. And this is probably the one that, I mean, it doesn't bother me anymore to talk about this. It did when he left the Green Party, when he decided to run on his own. I was really upset because I was like, wow. And this is something that Brianna Joy Gray has said too, and I really appreciate that. There was this feeling, hey, we on the left can unite behind West's campaign. He's running as a Green. He's running on the, he's hoping he's going to be part of a movement, building a movement. He's going to try to build a movement. And it didn't happen. But he could still be a progressive, right? I mean, I think what he did is harm the party, harmed the movement. And I don't have any great love for the Green Party. There are a lot of issues in the Green Party that a lot of ways the Green positions the Green Party takes, I don't agree with. But what's odd to me is that West's criticism of the Green Party is he's criticizing them for being the way. He says they're not basically woke enough. He says they don't engage in enough identity politics, which is absurd. That is my precise criticism of the Green Party. They are too engaged in social justice warriorism, meaning focusing in on innate differences, on identity groups as victims, rather than individuals who may be making sure that everyone who is suffering, their needs are addressed. Rather, what the Green Party does, and this is where I have a problem with them, and I talked to Jill Stein about this, is they're too invested in identity group politics. And for those of you who say, well, you do that with Palestine, you're always talking about how Israel is the oppressor and Palestine is the victim. Isn't that make you a guy who's big on identity politics? Well, Israel's a country, and Israel is persecuting the people of Palestine. That's clear cut. There's no question about it. Israel is the oppressor, is the oppressive nation. That's not the same when it comes to issues like gender politics, sex-based politics, race-based politics. That's different. It's different because and maybe some people disagree, maybe Rando Calrissian will disagree, but there are many privileged African Americans in the United States. We had an African American president. We have an African Asian, a woman of African and Asian descent who's vice president. There's never been a Palestinian president of Israel. There are no pogroms right now being conducted against any minority community in the United States the way Israel is conducting ethnic cleansing and apartheid in Israel. I'm not saying there aren't real significant problems that face communities of color, and they need to be addressed. But the way we can address them is by addressing economic injustice, guaranteeing that all have enough and none have too much. And by the way, that should also be done in Palestine. But the political rights and the right of self-determination of the Palestinian people must also be respected. Here's Brianna Joy Gray with Dr. West. Oh, let's get that video.
It doesn't put white supremacy and empire at the center.
Start this from the beginning.
Of struggle for justice, but there'll never be a left that doesn't put white supremacy and empire at the center. And
so he says there'll never be a left. Let me put myself in a different place on that screen there. There'll never be a left that doesn't put white supremacy and empire at the center. Well, I assume he's only talking about the United States, because obviously there are countries like China where white supremacy isn't a problem, obviously. So I'm not clear. India, white supremacy is not a problem in those countries. So I'm not clear if he's means just the United States or the West. But when you say that, you're, again, doing exactly what AOC does. You're pitting groups of people against each other whom you should be trying to unite. There are many white homeless people in this country. There are many white victims in this country. And they're not supreme. It's not white supremacy. It's an economic system that provides extraordinary rewards to a tiny number of people and leaves many, many, many more in dire need. A disproportionate number of whom are of color, but a plurality of whom happen to be white. And if you want to change that, Dr. West, then build a movement that unites people across race lines, across gender lines, across sex lines. You're doing just the opposite. That's not progressive. It's just not. Dr. West's complaint is that, and you just heard it, the Green Party doesn't center white supremacy and empire. That's why he left it. There's some other, he talks about personality differences. There's tremendous pushback from Ajamu Baraka, a former Green Party vice presidential candidate. I believe he's running for vice president this year with Jill Stein. And Jill Stein both said that's just not true. The way West characterizes his departure from the Green Party isn't accurate. No one told him you can't center white supremacy. No one told him don't talk about racism. He also complains that he had to engage in a primary process. In other words, he would have to run in the Green Party primary. Now, that's what you do when you generally are running for office. Donald Trump has to run the Republican primary. He won. He had to run it. Joe Biden had to run in the Democratic primary. It was rigged. It was rigged in his favor, and anyone who might have had any chance to defeat him, was pushed out if they were, even considering running. But they still had a primary. And what Baraka said, and I was watching this video yesterday, or listening to it, I should say, when I was driving, I wasn't watching. He said, hey, he was going to get the nomination. There was no challenges. There were no serious challenges. There might have been a few people who were going to say, we want to debate with you, Dr. West, but there was no question he was going to get it. But for whatever reason, he didn't want to engage in a primary process at all. So again, that's not progressive. Progressive is you go out there and you debate. And you say, this is why I believe my vision is best. This is why I'm the strongest candidate. I hope you'll support me. He didn't do that. And his argument, and I said this, look, I don't like the Green Party's focus on identity politics. I think they focus far too much on it and not simply on economic injustice, not simply on wealth and power inequality, period. I think that by talking about race, white supremacy, whatever you want to call it, to the degree they do, they actually hurt the movement. They make it less likely to succeed. But, my God, I don't know why Dr. West has any problem with them. Their views are seemingly completely aligned with him on this. So, instead of running as a Green, he announces, along with his his running mate, Melina Abdullah, that they're going to be running in Colorado on the Unity Party ballot. And this got a lot of pushback, a lot of criticism on YouTube and from other live streamers and podcasters like myself, with the argument, well, who, laughing, what's the Unity Party? No one ever heard of the Unity Party. The Unity Party is a centrist party, this and that. And I'll talk about that in a second. But my bigger issue there is I'm not going to make fun of the Unity Party. But if your problem is you're a lone wolf, you don't like to have to comport with any party, then why are you running as a Unity Party candidate? That seems just insane. One other point, Melina Abdullah was a big Black Lives Warrior leader, and she's an academic. If you're really a progressive, if you're really on the side of the workers and the poor, why didn't you nominate someone who comes from that background? I don't get it. I really don't. It just, none of this is consistent with the Dr. West who presents himself as a progressive, right? Who presents himself as a progressive. Just real quick, from the Unity Party platform, and I'm not going to go bash them. Look, you can run for president, run. Whatever party will have you, that's fine. You people vote mostly for the candidate, not for the party. But his specific complaint, Dr. West's specific complaint, is that the Green Party doesn't share his values. What's the first item on the plan on the Unity Party platform? A balanced budget amendment. How is that? Is that consistent? I'm not, as a progressive, I'm not as far to the big a hater of balanced budget amendments as some. I think the government should basically run a balanced budget. I don't think we should spend more than we have, except in certain circumstances that are well outlined by John Maynard Keynes. Right now, with so much wealth and power concentrated in such few hands, the solution, the first thing we should try, I think, is certainly not the deficit spending we're engaging in now, but much, much higher top marginal taxes, and use that money to pay for the essential government services that I think we agree on, making sure no one is sleeping under bridges, starving begging in the streets. Make sure that we have the roads are maintained, that we're, conducting critical fight against the climate crisis and all that. So let's use the money that we have, which is, mostly in the bank accounts of the super rich. We don't need deficit spending. We might if we were in a serious depression, but we're not. I don't have a huge problem with the balanced budget amendment, but for that to be their first priority is absurd. If you're a progressive, it would be very far down your list if it was even on your list at all. And for most progressives, it wouldn't be. And it wouldn't even be on mine. I don't think there should be an amendment for it. But let's compare and contrast. Presumably, for Dr. West, the Unity Party platform is more to his liking than the Green Party platform, which isn't woke enough, doesn't take seriously white supremacy. This is right there. This is from the Green Party. There's nothing about reparations in the Unity Party platform. They talk a little bit about equality under the law. The Green Party platform explicitly calls for reparations. The Green Party platform specifically identifies white supremacy as a social problem today of paramount significance. So where is Dr. West's concern? I mean, it's like he's making it up, and it's not even a little bit persuasive. His claim that somehow the Green Party and its leaders weren't there for him, didn't support his issues. Well, as both Ajamu Baraka and Jill Stein said, you run your own campaign. Talk about what you care about. If you care most about white supremacy and empire, talk about it. But don't claim that we're not behind you. Look at our platform. He's not progressive. A progressive wants to build a movement for justice. They don't fly off half-cocked when they're not getting every single thing exactly the way they want it, and they get some pushback in a party that they're presumably hoping to lead. I don't cotton to Joe Biden, but he understands that as the leader of the Democrat Party, people aren't going to all agree with him. There's going to be a lot of pushback. Apparently, Dr. West didn't get that memo, which is hard to understand. But regardless, he's not progressive. All right, real quick, I wanted to... Okay, so I was going to talk a little bit about, why, again, I think I have so much trouble building an audience, because whenever I say something, a potential audience member is likely to be offended. But I'm not going to go there. I want to just really, maybe we'll do that tomorrow. By the way, tomorrow, maybe not tomorrow, maybe Thursday. Thursday, Arlen will be with us. No, Monday with Arlen this week. So Thursday with Arlen, yes. Tomorrow, Bill Neal comes back, historian. He is supporting boots on the ground in Ukraine. So we'll have a spirited disagreement there. No question. Got this from Jeff, this comment, and I really felt it deserved a response. And it was something I was thinking about over the weekend when I was in Astoria, Queens, and specifically in the area. They call it Little Egypt, or at least I've heard it called Little Egypt. I shouldn't say they. I'm not sure if the people there call it Little Egypt. I saw online the area. Well, Astoria is a big neighborhood. I've never really spent very little time in Queens, even though I don't live very far from there. Usually that's where I would go on the airport. Maybe if I was going to, one of the two airports, or Eastern Long Island, I would go through Queens, but I never spent a lot of time there. But over the weekend, or at least Sunday, I spent a number of hours walking through Astoria, which is a very vibrant, very mixed neighborhood, very diverse, lots and lots of different people. There's very interesting, not real wealthy. And that was something I noticed, because Saturday I was in Westchester, and pretty near my house in Rye is a very affluent community. And I went out to Purchase, which is where SUNY, State University of New York Purchase, is located. And the estates there are just, it's obscene wealth. It's obscene levels. People with large, big acres. It's almost like they have a golf course. Individuals. I mean, certainly there would be billionaires there. And it's just obscene when you go to Astoria, which is pretty much working to middle class. People are it's very congested. And by the way, it's not cheap. I'm sure you have to pay thousands to get a 2-bedroom apartment there. I don't know the exact rate, but I'll bet a 2-bedroom is at least over $2,000 in Astoria. I'll look it up at some point. So the wealth and income inequality is just obscene in New York State. And I find it ironic, although not surprising. That makes sense. Ironic, but not surprising, that there are many people who live in New York, and perhaps most, who have a superiority complex. They think, oh, we live in this democratic state, and we're so great, and we have such good restaurants, and we're so sophisticated. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you see how much poverty, homelessness your city is? You can't even keep it clean. Yes, it's exciting. I'm not putting down New York City. It's exciting. There's so many different people. People seem to get along. It's all beautiful. But, I mean, my gosh, there's so many problems, too, that you're not addressing. So don't act like you're somehow superior. I got this from Jeff. Why is it, because I'm always criticizing, right, Israel for killing Gazans and killing Palestinians. Why is it you never address how women are treated in Gaza? You never call it for what it is, which is an oppressive, extreme, religious-controlled area where women have little to no rights. Birth control and abortion are illegal. 81% of women are employed. So at least according to Jeff, it's really bad in Gaza, and I should talk about that. So I'm going to talk about that now. First of all, I'm not an expert. I will accept what you're saying with a grain or two of salt. In other words, I think it probably isn't great for women. It's probably, according to Jeff, homosexuality is illegal and punishable by death. Is intellectual dishonesty to not discuss these barbaric laws and practices. So what really brought this to mind is when I was in that little Egypt neighborhood in Queens, in Astoria, Queens, I did notice for sure that many women, not all, many women, many girls are wearing the headscarf or even more the chador. I think the chador is when your face is covered and all you can see are the eyes. You know, it's an 80, 85 degree day. The women are dressed all in black, some of them. And it's weird, man. It's different. And I don't like it. I don't think it's good. They're clearly, in many cases, the wife is subservient. They stand back. The husbands are all, or the men or whatever they are, they're men. I mean, that's what they are. They're gathered around, drinking their coffee, maybe smoking a hookah. They're all engaged in conversation. The women are just expected to stay, behind. I observed this. I didn't like it. It made me really uncomfortable. So yeah, it's not good. I looked up, did he mention honor killings? I think he did. I looked this up. Yeah, honor killings still happen. So I looked that up, and Al Jazeera had an article about this. Let's see. From the most recent honor killing I saw, and I'm not saying, I did a thorough search and there may be more, but according to Al Jazeera, which is, by the way, an Arab, right? The Arab media. So they're reporting on it. They're progressive. Femicide, killing of a woman, highlights need for domestic violence law. So this was 2021. I don't know if this would really qualify as an honor killing, but there was another honor killing where a few years earlier that I read about where a woman who had just gotten engaged posted a selfie of her and her fiance, and his family was so shamed by that she announced the engagement. Apparently it's only the husband's or the man's family that's supposed to be announcing it, and she was too forward, she was too brazen, so they killed her. So it's really bad. I'm not denying it. That stuff's really bad. Now, I'm not going to say all Palestinians are like that. And, we often hear, right, in the West about how primitive the Islamic religion is, how Muslims are backwards. And, some religious people in all religions are medieval. The Hasidic Jewish community is incredibly sexist. Women have virtually no rights. There's plenty of abuse of women. In Christian cults, you have these child abusive cult leaders. I don't want to compare. My sense is that there's a lot of extreme Muslims. It's a decent percentage of the population. And it's tragic. It's awful. But in the end, that doesn't excuse, justify what Israel's doing. So some of the people in Gaza have very primitive attitudes towards women. And some are even violent against women. And gays don't have rights. That doesn't mean it's okay for Israel to bomb civilians or kill women or kill men. None of that follows. Recognition that in some ways Gaza may be behind the West doesn't negate the cruelty, the sadism, the wrong, the essential evil of what Israel's doing. And I would say to those who care, as I do, for the women and girls in these Muslim countries who aren't afforded the kind of rights that we believe they should have, that the way to improve their quality of life is not to kill them, not to kill their husbands or their mothers or their grandparents or their babies. The way to improve their lives is to provide a measure of justice, of economic security, of fairness, jobs, education, not to jam it down people's throats and insist, well, we know better than you. But to say, to model a more inclusive, equitable, just society. And of course, what we're doing is just the opposite. What argument? If you're a women's rights activist in Gaza, are you going to say, oh, look at women's rights are great. Look at how they have them in Israel and the United States. Obviously, it's just the opposite. If you're a hardline religious extremist, you would say, those genocidal maniacs in Israel and the United States, how dare they tell us we're supposed to treat women better? They're killing them. So, yes, I get it. It's not, some things, this is another reason I don't think I have a great, I have trouble with getting big audiences. And I'm sure you can laugh and say, oh, there's lots of reasons, Al. This is pretty far down on the list. But okay, I'm not like one of those who condemns the West, or certainly not who throws the baby out of the bathwater. Yes, colonialism is awful. Yes, we've lorded it over other people. Yes, we've used our advanced technology to oppress people rather than to improve the quality of their lives. But that doesn't mean that we throw out Western philosophy and Western art and Western thought and Western civilization. We've also got much to be proud of. The great crime, I think, of the West is that thinkers, philosophers who are, humanists, that their message we've been so unwilling to put into practice, right? But the Thomas Paines and the Michelangelo, the art of the Michelangelos and the genius of, that Athenian democracy ultimately led to, right? The idea that we choose our leaders, our representatives, that we, the people, make the decisions for ourselves. We haven't even given ourselves freedom and democracy, but the ideas are there, Montesquieu. So to me, the shame of the West is not these ideas, but that we have jealously guarded them and only kept them for some of us. Not even for all of us in countries like France and great, UK and the United States, where many of them originated. Not all. I'm certainly not dismissing other cultures, other civilizations for their humanistic ideas. But let's face it, the Enlightenment was a flowering of humanism. And yet we have not implemented its the highest ideals. That's what's wrong with the West, not the ideas themselves, at least that were behind the Enlightenment. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Tomorrow, Bill Neal, he and I'm sure we'll get into it when it comes to actually, American soldiers being deployed, says Bill. That's what we need to do in Ukraine. Okay, well, we'll talk about it tomorrow.